Hey guys, how's it going? Good. Good to see you this morning. You can lead a horse to water, but... Okay, hang on, let's try that again. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Anybody here try to make a horse drink water? You've tried? You've actually tried to make a horse drink water? Wow, there's like a lesson, and that's a whole other lesson. That is a practical lesson. I love it. Man. That was a good worship time this morning. That was good. I don't even need to preach. We can just continue praising Jesus. That's what it's all about, right? You guys probably don't need to listen to me talk for another 20 minutes. You could probably just be happy praising Jesus this morning. Anybody here ever been thirsty before? If half the hands go up, this is a problem. Okay, so hang on. Side note, let's back up for a few seconds. So this is church. And at church, we try. We're not perfect. We know that. No perfect people allowed at church. We get that. But we don't want to encourage lying. And I think what just happened is lying by omission. So let's try this again. Who here's ever been thirsty before? Hey, there we go. See, telling the truth is not hard. Good job. Good job. So okay, so some of you have been thirsty. That's good. Does anybody here sweat? I mean, okay, not just the normal amount where you perspire like a regular person, but who here maybe possibly has a medical condition that causes them to sweat so much? Amen. Amen. Anybody else? Yep. We got a bunch of sweaters here. Perfect. We'll have a support meeting after the service today. I sweat. I can't help it. I've been like that my entire life. I am unnaturally warm all the time. And which makes it actually very interesting on the fire department when I have to wear all that gear and then go into a burning building. That's a whole different ball game. But I perspire rapidly. And if I perspire rapidly, I will also expire rapidly. And so when we went to Thailand and when I was in the Philippines, I think the hand of God was upon me in the Philippines, not so much in Thailand. I'm not sure exactly what happened here. But I went to the Philippines, and the rule in the Philippines was all the time I had to wear long pants and long sleeve shirts because I've got tattoos on my arms. And if you are in most East Asian countries, if you have tattoos, it means that you were part of a gang or you've done a very, very, very terrible or heinous crime. And we think that's weird here, I'm sure, but that's just how it is over there. And you have to respect the rules of the land because it's not our land. So when I was in the Philippines and I got the letter before I went saying I got to wear long sleeve shirts the whole time, I got a little bit nervous. I was like, oh no, Lord, please, I need help. And I prayed a lot before I went to the Philippines, a lot, because I was excited to go and I was excited to share the gospel and I was excited to preach and to teach and to travel through the nation, and that was wonderful. But I was not excited to sweat because I knew that I already sweat. It could be 40 below outside and I would still be sweating. And I was so terrified to go to a nation where it's 50 above and 110% humidity the whole time and have to wear long pants and long shirts. I was nervous about this. This was actually almost a deal breaker for me to go on this trip. I can't explain to you how nerve-wracking this was. So I spent 2 months leading up to this trip privately with the Lord. Jesus, please close up my sweat glands and keep me from dying in the Philippines from lack of water. So what was amazing is miraculously, the entire trip, we're going through the jungle, we're traveling all over the place in the Philippines and in vehicles without air conditioning, and the places we slept didn't have air conditioning, and it was just a crazy place. But miraculously, I never, ever, ever overheated, and in fact, I barely ever sweat the whole time I was there. So I would actually consider that to be no small miracle. That was actually a wonderful thing. I took it for granted that Thailand would be the same thing, so I didn't pray at all before I went to Thailand. I was like, yeah, God did it once. He's obviously going to do it again. I almost died in Thailand. Almost died. I had massive, massive amounts of water loss to the point where I was having to consume loads and loads and loads of Pedialyte, electrolytes, kind of for kids. But it's for adults as well, and it helps the water stick into your body. It actually causes the water to go into your system and stay in your system. And I mean, Ben, you were with me. Like I was, amen, he says. I was guzzling like dozens of liters of water every single day with the electrolyte mix in it, isotonics, just in order to actually carry through the day. But I was sweating, like probably 7 pounds of water loss every single day. I'd have to replenish and replenish and replenish. I was thirsty because I was losing water and I was thirsty. And it didn't matter how much water I went after and I consumed, I still needed more of it. And I was having to search out water and trying to find water. And I even got to the point where I actually drank water out of the tap a few times, which is a big no-no. That's probably why I got parasites when I came back, I'm sure. And, well, actually, I ate meat of an unknown origin that was cooked on a bicycle rim. That also could have been where the parasite came from, now that I think about it. Yeah, that's actually probably where it came from. Don't eat that kind of food when you're in Thailand. So I needed water. I was thirsty. And you ever been maybe you've experienced this before, where you wake up in the middle of the night and you are so parched because you worked all day and you didn't think to drink enough water during the day, and you're so thirsty that 2 o'clock in the morning rolls around and you groggily make your way to your bathroom sink or your kitchen sink and you try to fumble around for a cup out of the thing and you put it under the tap and you put the water to your mouth and you take a drink and it tastes sweet? Has anybody ever had that before? Where the water is so good and so refreshing that just normal water has a sweet taste to it. I've experienced that. We need water, and we chase after it. And I think without realizing it, if we don't consume enough water, we'll actually perish quite rapidly. And what's interesting is if we consume the wrong type of water, it will equally as quickly kill us. In a very violent nature, actually. We could drink pure, clean water, and it refreshes our physical bodies. We could drink deionized water, or DI water, and just 4 liters of DI water will go into our body and cause our cell walls to rupture, and we will bleed and rupture from the inside out. It will kill us. Just 4 liters of DI water, deionized water. It's fascinating. And then we can drink water that has poisons or parasites or bugs in it. And that can get into our system and actually cause us to be more thirsty and need water even more. And we chase after it, and it never, ever sustains us. We see that represented sometimes on Sunday morning TV shows or when we're flipping through channels. We see the kids that are represented on World Vision or Compassion International, and we see these kids who don't have a supply of clean drinking water, and no matter how much dirty water they consume, it doesn't satisfy what they need. A 70-pound child, is made up of about 53 pounds of water. Just think about that for a second. So children, 75% of their bodies is water. A 70-pound child is made up of about 53 pounds of water. A 220-pound adult is made up of about 132 pounds of water. 60% of their body weight is water. And a senior, 175-pound senior, is made up of about 87.5 pounds of water. 50% of their body weight is water. If you look at those numbers, you realize that water is kind of important. Would you agree? Yeah, water is pretty important. There's an Ethiopian proverb that says this: "In the abundance of water, a fool is thirsty." You can write that down if you want to. In the abundance of water, a fool is thirsty. What's interesting is that as much as we need water to quench our physical thirst and keep our physical bodies ticking, so much more so do we need that spiritual water. So much more so do we need that spiritual water. Maybe you just got a text message here. It's very important. Hang on a second. Josh, are you thirsty? Do you need some water? We didn't orchestrate this. This just happened to happen. Oh, thank you, buddy. You needed your thirst quenched, right? You were sweating. Okay. Man. So much more so we need that spiritual water. When we would take teams to Shambhala, you guys know the music festival Shambhala. It's actually coming up here in not too long from now. We would take thousands and thousands, 10,000 bottles of water, and that would be our in to hand out a water to somebody who's physically thirsty, but it would be an opportunity to tell them about what they really need to satisfy their thirst. Because man, oh man, we get spiritually parched at times, don't we? Has anybody here ever been spiritually parched before? You know, parched, like you haven't drank enough water and it's like your mouth's dry, your tongue's sticking to the roof of your mouth. You're not thinking straight because you're all dehydrated like a piece of jerky. I'm just saying. Hallelujah. What's interesting, though, is that we get like that spiritually, don't we? We get spiritually parched. And our whole world around us, and including sometimes in the church, there are people who are spiritually parched. They're thirsty. They're so thirsty, and they're surrounded by an abundance of spiritual water, yet they're thirsty, and they don't know how to quench it. Jesus made a really interesting statement. He's at a party at a festival. And he stood up in the middle of a party, in the middle of a festival. You guys been to Sunfest before, right? Yeah. Anybody ever been to like a big festival somewhere? Yeah? Okay, like, in Manitoba we had the Corn and Apple Festival. Such a farmer thing to do. It's a big festival, right? You got these kids eating candy apples and chewing on the corn, and it's wonderful. And then you put them on one of those spinny rides, and then all the corn and all the apples everywhere. That's just what we did. We're going to the festival, Ma. Eat some corn and apples, kids. So Jesus is in the middle of this festival, and he's hanging out with people, and it's a busy crowd. And you can imagine what it's like to be. You guys remember Sunfest, right? Like, you get a Sunfest on a year that it's not raining. It's probably happened once in history. And you're walking through all the vendors and all the food trucks and all the hustle and bustle of the people, and it's chaos, right? Like there's kids running around everywhere. We don't even know who they belong to. There's adults running around everywhere. We don't even know who they belong to. And there's just food vendors trying to sling pizzas and Greek food. And I always find it interesting that it's the Filipinos that are selling the Greek food. I don't really understand how that works. I can't figure that one out yet, but that's what happens at festivals. And it's a big festival. And Jesus kind of just stands up. I don't really know where he stood up, but it says this in John 7:37-39. It says, on the last and the greatest day of the festival, so this is a big hoopla. This is like BCDC, which is the AC/DC knockoff band, BCDC playing at Sunfest. It is a jam-packed house. There's food vendors everywhere. There's t-shirt vendors everywhere. There's popcorn and fun and parties and everything going on all over the fairgrounds. It's a wonderful time. And then Jesus just stands up at the end and the greatest and the biggest day of the festival. He stands up, don't know where, but he stands up. And he says in a loud voice. Now, we got to read into the text a little bit, because sometimes when we read biblical text, it can seem muted. We don't really have a lot of like chutzpah when we read the Bible. We kind of just read it bland. We read it flat. But there's actually some excitement that's in the text. And Jesus actually says this. He stands up and he says in a loud voice this: let anyone who's thirsty come to me and drink. Now you can imagine at this point that everyone is looking at Jesus, and they're looking at the snow cone trailer, and they're looking at the slushy vendor, and they're thinking, what does he have that these guys don't have? We got some guy in some robe standing on a stool, and he's shouting out in the middle of the BCDC concert, hey, anyone who's thirsty, come to me and drink. But we don't even see that there is a supply of beverages anywhere near him. It's kind of a weird thing. Jesus, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Jesus says weird stuff that gets our attention. But I can tell you that if some guy stood up in the middle of Sunfest and shouted in a loud voice, hey, if anyone's thirsty, come on over here and I will help you not be thirsty anymore, I'd be like, I want to see what this guy's up to. because this is going to be either amazing or hilarious. Because it's the Kootenays, right? And then we might be calling him for some backup because someone was smoking something fun. So, let anyone who's thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, just as the scriptures or the prophecies or the Torah, pick a word to put in there, has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them. What does that even mean? You got this guy standing up in the middle of the party, and he stands up in front of all the people, and he says in a loud voice, if you're thirsty, come over here. I got you taken care of. If you believe in me, just as it said in those old books, rivers of living water is going to flow from within inside of you. Wow. This is why I think Jesus said things in a weird way. If I stood up in the middle of a BCDC concert and I said, yo, free waters, I probably wouldn't get much of attention at all. Because people always think, free water, it's a scam. He's going to want my money. That's a true story. You know how hard it was to give out 10,000 bottles of water at Shambhala? What's the catch? There's no catch. What do you mean there's no catch? I just want to give you water. I'm thirsty. I need water, but I don't have any money. It's free. You don't need money. I want to give you a free water. What's the catch? There's no catch. There's no catch. There's no catch. But Jesus says something so crazy, and this is why I think the crazy part works, okay? If you're just kind of thirsty, you don't really give a rip about maybe getting free water that perhaps has some type of STD in it. You don't care. You're not going to even bother wasting your time. I'm only partially thirsty. I'll get water from my tap where I know it's clean. I don't know what that guy's got in his bottles of water. I'm going to stay away. But if you are super, super thirsty, and you see kids do this all over the news and the TV and from Compassion Canada and all these different support networks around the world, people travel tens and tens of miles in the scorching heat on their knees, on their hands, to go and suck water out of the ground that is filthy and gross and full of parasites because they're thirsty and they need something and they don't know what else to do. They're thirsty and they need something and they don't know what else to do, so they will go to the nth degree to try to find some way to satisfy their thirst. And I think Jesus stood up in the middle of this festival. He didn't care what people thought about him. He didn't care what people were going to say about him. He didn't care about the folks that didn't care if they were thirsty or not, who could just go home to their tap and have a sip of water and think that they were fine. Jesus is after the sick, right? Jesus said this throughout the Bible. I'm the doctor. I didn't come here for those who are healthy. I came for the ones who are sick. And he's talking to the sick people right now. Jesus is talking to the people who are desperate for something to drink. Jesus is capturing the attention of the people who are the most marginalized in society when it comes to some type of spiritual sustenance. They don't have any. They're bankrupt of it. They are parched. They are thirsty. They are starving for something to feed their spirits. And you got this guy standing up in the middle of the concert at Sunfest Parade, and he makes this insane declaration. If you come to me, just as the prophecies have said, rivers of living water will flow from within you. What? What does that even mean? But you know what's cool? Is that I know that if I was that thirsty, I wouldn't even care what it meant. I just know that this guy's speaking with authority, and he seems to know what he's talking about, and he's pretty sure of this. I don't get it, but I need something because I am a mess. We watch these videos of these kids and these moms in Africa. It is only the woman's job to go and travel to the nearest source of water. And they carry this water home to the tune of 20 kilograms atop their head. And they scoop it out of streams and they try to sift it out the best they can, but it's dirty and gross and full of bugs, and it's not going to give life. It'll just prolong life a little bit. But these people go to that length. They go to that degree. They have that type of commitment to get somewhere because they need something. And I think Jesus is capturing the attention of people who just need something. They've tried everything else. And ladies and gentlemen, we live in an area where people have tried everything else. everything else. Everything else. And I know exactly how it seems to work in our area, in the Kootenays. It's a funny thing. The more crazy stuff that comes out of your mouth, the more interested people are to say, hey, maybe this is going to help me. I've got some rosemary herbs in my backyard, and they're going to cure your skin blotches. I'll try it. I need something to fix my problem. You guys all know that person, right? We've all been there. Or the things that we put into our bodies to try to fix what ails us. We will try anything. We're a weird people. And we'll chase after the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, because we are wholly unsatisfied with where it leaves us. And Jesus is coming for the people who are completely dissatisfied with the status quo, who know that they're spiritually bankrupt and they need something that's going to fix them, to top up the account, to make them flush and give them something beyond abundance, where in fact waters of life will pour from them. And he makes this insane statement. If you believe in me, just as it says in the books of old, rivers of living water will flow from within them. And it says this, by this he meant the Spirit, whom those who believed in him were later to receive. Up to that time, the Spirit had not been given, since Jesus had not yet been glorified. Jesus is saying, here's the deal. Are you thirsty? Come to me. I will cure what ails you. It says in Acts chapter 17, for in him we have life. In him we live and we move and we have our being. Some of your poets, they say, as you're talking to the people around them, say this, we are his offspring. We have a connection to God because of Jesus Christ. We are actually made in God's image, which is a profound thing to contemplate and wonder and suppose about. But God created us, breathed breath into our lungs, and put a footstep in our steps. And what's amazing when you look at the whole mechanics of how it works is we are made in his image, and he somehow gave us creativity and life and joy. And where does this all even come from? Where do our ideas come from? Where do our passions and our excitement come from? Where do these things, where were they birthed from? What's their genesis? They came from the fact that we have life in our steps because of God himself making us in his image. There's a part of our DNA that yearns to be united with the Father. There's a part of the innermost piece of our being, our cardia, our inner man, that desires to have a connection to something more than the stuff that just dies around us all day long. Jesus says this in John, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. Josh, you're going to be thirsty again. You're going to come back up here and you're going to sweat some more and you're going to be thirsty again. Anyone who drinks that water will always be thirsty again. You can't just go and take a sip of water and expect that it's going to be a cure-all for your thirst, because you'll have to go back again and back again and back again and back again, and you will never, ever, ever have your life's thirst quenched with just one sip, unless you're talking about going to Jesus. Unless you're talking about going to Jesus regarding your spirit and getting some of that spiritual water. Jesus says everyone who drinks of this water will be thirsty again. But listen up, anyone who drinks of the water that I give them will never thirst. The water that I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Man, I don't know about you, but I want some of that water. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be thirsty anymore. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of seeking after the Powerades and the thirsty mixes and the Pedialytes and the isotonics that I can grab from 7-Eleven that I think is going to fix my problem, but it just leaves me thirsty again. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of chasing after every cookie cutter religion and spiritual idea and flimsy spiritual leader that is up one day and down the next. I'm sick and tired of it. I want the thing that's never going to fail. I want the stuff that's never going to leave me wanting. I want the thing that is going to fill me up and fix my parched soul. And Jesus, if I say I believe in him, says he's got the answer. And if I go to him, he is faithful to give me that sip from his cup that will never run dry. And I got to tell you, when we taste from his cup, something changes in us. When we come to the Father, when we get to know Jesus, something changes in us. I've been thirsty before. And when I walk away from Jesus, I get thirsty again. Let's not be too Christian to answer this next question, all right? You ever have those times, good church, where you know you're far from God and you are just thirsty? Yeah. I've talked to some of you this week about this very thing. God's never left us and he's never forsaken us, but sometimes we leave him and walk the other direction. And we're thirsty. And we find that we get all squirrely in our minds, right? Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I got to try this. Maybe I'll put this into my diet or change what I'm eating. If I cut out gluten, I'll be closer to Jesus. And we never even get to the point that comes from surrendering to our Father in heaven. We try all of these other little things instead of simply going to the cross. We're not called to try all these other little things. We're only called to just go to the cross. I was chatting with another gentleman this week. We're sitting in my office and we're going through some life stuff. And he had a big question about how things are and what's going on in his life and how to fix some of the problems that he's struggling with. And the answer I gave him was really, really simple. The gist of it was, go and spend time with Jesus. And he sat there in silence for quite some time. His head was hung low, and he was really thinking this through. And he said this, sometimes I just wish the answers weren't so easy. Sometimes I wish the answers just weren't so easy. Because it sure makes us feel foolish when we miss the easy answers, hey? Church, this morning, I want to encourage you that it is time to have that thirst quenched. Actually, worship team, I'll get to the worship team to come up. It is time to have that thirst quenched. And if you've been parched, if you've been dry in your spirit, and you know you've taken a few degrees steps away from God, and it's been a couple of years, and now before you knew it, you are miles apart from where you ought to be, it's time to take a sip of the living water that comes only from Jesus Christ this morning. It's time. It's time to stop being parched. It's time to stop being thirsty. It's time to stop seeking for the next best thing that's going to fix your problem. You simply need to start coming to Jesus. Because when you come to Jesus, he does an amazing thing. When we sip from that cup and we drink of that water and that river of life begins flowing in us and out of us, what's fascinating is that we receive a cleansing that we can never expect to possibly happen. There's a river of life flowing out of me. Makes the lame to walk and the blind to see. Opens prison doors, sets the captives free. I've got a river of life flowing out of me. Man. What a simple old song we sing with our kids, right? But how profound is it to know that when we come to Jesus and we sip from his cup and his word does exactly what it promises. When Jesus stood up in front of those people and he shouted out at that concert and he's hanging out at the festival and he says to all the people around him, guys, if you're thirsty, come to me, because when you sip of this cup, you're going to have eternal flowing water coming through you. You know what comes along with clean water flowing through something? There's a cleansing that happens. There's a restoration that occurs. Sediment that had built up over centuries of ruin and destruction and deposits that had no business being there, they get washed away by the power of the water. And then before we know it, we can boldly and triumphantly declare that we've been washed by the blood of the Lamb. Never before have we been so clean and pure than when we enter into a relationship with Jesus and we take a sip from his cup and say, Jesus, I'm tired of chasing these things. I'm tired of chasing after all this stuff. I don't have any energy left in me to run anymore. I am thirsty. I am parched. I am fading away and I don't know what else to do. And Jesus says, hey, come here. Come here. I've got something for you. Just take a sip. I don't know, Jesus. Just take a sip, I said. Come here, son. Come here, daughter. I got something for you, and it's a good gift. It's a gift of life. It's a gift of abundance. It's a gift that's going to give you love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. Jesus, those are things that I want in my life. How did you know? I'll tell you how I knew. Because inside your spirit, in the heart of who you are, my fingerprint is upon you. And you will try to run your whole life away from what you need, but you will only be satisfied when you come back to me. Jesus, we don't want to just drink any old water anymore. Jesus, we need you. We need you, Jesus. This morning, Jesus, we choose to come to you and respond to your call of taking a sip from your cup. To have a taste of your water. And Jesus, I believe you. I believe you, Jesus. When you declare that your water will never leave us thirsty again, that it will quench the thirst of our spirits, I believe you, Jesus. This morning, Lord, as the church, we choose to believe today in your word. We choose to believe the truth that's in your gospel and represented in the holy scriptures, spoken of from the dawn of time to this moment now. We choose to believe your everlasting truth that says we can come to you when we're thirsty. Jesus. Jesus, we're thirsty.